there are pockets of time for us and for you, I'm sure, where it is unstable and you don't know when that next kind of opportunity is going to hit or that next, opportunity to monetize is.
To move away from a stable job and income, you don't realize how used to it you are.
Inbound interest from a brand, that conversation is just far better in your favor. And the way you do that is the high volume, is to really take a look at let's say the last 50 or 100 pieces of content that you've made, find a common denominator in the top 5. And 80% of your content should be based off of the common denominator you found in those top 5 concepts.
There's still times when, for example, I create a piece of content and maybe it's a little bit controversial or something, because comedy is not going to be comedy unless it's a little bit controversial.
Of course.
And then I'm like, but what if people misinterpret me? And then, and then I'm like, so what if they do?
Welcome back to Rise Podcast, Life Stories of Accomplished Individuals. Guys, thank you as always for joining me today. Today we have Cristina Cataman with us. Cristina, what's going on?
How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
I think the first time you and I met in person was a couple of days ago when Valeria and I were on your podcast. And the first thing I said to you was, do you remember the first thing I said?
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Ty молодец." And how would you translate "Ty молодец"?
Like you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Like good, not really good for you, but good job on, I just noticed the balloons on the ceiling. This is hilarious.
It was my birthday. It was and they're still there. Yeah.
Oh, happy belated birthday.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, it's good job. Like you're doing well.
Yes. And it was well
really
received.
Sweet of you. I actually remember that after you left. I was like, that was so sweet.
But it's true. You are a ex-corporate auditor.
Yes, I did legal audit. I audited law firms for a little while there.
Okay. Well, I think just looking at you, I think we're far better suited. Just, looking and talking with you, you're far better suited for what you're doing now. So now you are an influencer. I like to, when I think of the type of influencer you are, I feel like you're a character comedian to a certain degree, because you do a parody of Eastern European women that is spot on. You have, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, about half a million followers across Instagram and TikTok. Is that number about
that? Yeah.
About that? And what's amazing to me is this shift that you made from being a corporate auditor, which to me sounds like just even scary, like walking to a room and saying, I am a corporate auditor.
Who loves auditors?
Well, maybe government auditors. I mean, the ones who are counting money when you've made a lot, I think those are good auditors. I'd like to get more of those in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely, I would say I was hated a lot. Maybe that's something that handling hate on social media, we kind of talked about a little bit earlier.
We did.
I just realized maybe that was a bit of a warm up,
We're gonna get into all of that hate. So about 2 years ago, you started doing this.
Yeah, 2.5 or so. It was during the last wave of lockdowns in Canada.
Okay. So when I got a message about you, and the message came to me to see if there was something that you and Valeria could do together. And as soon as I saw that message, it was an instant yes. It was an instant yes, because I already knew about you. I had already been following you. I had been seeing your content on both platforms already probably for the last year. So I recognized your name right away. And then when they sent me the link, I was like, yes. And I said, Valeria, guess what? You're doing this thing. She's like, who? I'm like, no, you're doing it. And she's like, okay. So and we did it, and we had a great time. Tell me about this. First of all, tell me about your early life. Where are you from?
I was born and raised in a small country called Moldova, between Ukraine and Romania. Many people in North America, I'm sure you are aware, they don't know where that is.
Nope.
Just because, we've kind of been passed around from historically Romania to Soviet Union. And by passed around, I just mean we haven't really been independent for that long. Speaking of history timelines. But it's a small country between Ukraine and Romania. I grew up there. I was born there. I was born shortly after the collapse of USSR. So
shortly after 1992.
Yes, 1991, 1995. I was born.
Okay.
And you and I probably had sort of similar upbringings in the sense that it was still very much Soviet, and the country was obviously going through a lot, economically speaking, and stuff like that. So I went to school there and grew up there. And then when I was 2 months away from turning 17, I jumped on what I call once in a lifetime opportunity that showed up to move to Canada.
How did that come about?
So I moved to Canada on a study permit, and then I ended up coming to, out of all places, Edmonton, because there were some people there with whom I could stay. And then, yeah, I finished school there, and I hated it at first because it was like going to Siberia pretty much. In January, it was the worst. It was
not to offend any of the Edmontonians.
No, not to offend any Edmontonians, but like people don't go to Canada in general for good weather, right? They go there for the opportunity, for the possibilities that you can have. And so, yeah, like I moved when I was 2 months away from turning 17. Then shortly after high school, like I had a boyfriend there. So that did not end.
Sorry, I have a question. Sorry, did you moved with your family or no?
No, I moved by myself.
Okay, so I want to dig into that a little bit. So you at the age of 17, I mean, you're a kid still, and you moved by yourself. That wasn't scary for you?
It was the most terrifying thing ever.
What? So
to date.
To date, wow.
Yeah.
No, I can't even imagine. I mean, it's 17. I left the former Soviet Union. I was born in Ukraine. I left in 1976, a couple of years before you did. And I left, and I came with my parents. So it was a very different experience. And then my first memories were in Canada. But you actually grew up in Moldova, in Chisinau, which you told me that's where you're from. And so you came when you were 17 years of age. Tell me about that experience. Like how did that manifest itself? That must have been really scary.
It was really scary. I mean, for any immigrant, I think, like anybody who moves to a different place, you're leaving not only your comfort, but you're most of the time leaving your family. You're leaving everything you know. And a lot of times, it was the same thing for me. You don't know when you're going to come back, because when it comes to moving to a place like US or Canada, there's a lot of, documents that you need to sort out. You need visas and all of that kind of stuff. So you're almost in this place of like, I'm leaving. I know I could come back, but that's almost not an option because you're moving for a reason, and coming back is almost like giving up, right? So it's always in the back of your head. It's like, okay, if all else fails, of course I could go back. But at the same time, you're going for a bigger opportunity. You're going for, a better life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really terrifying. I mean, I left everything and everyone I've ever known.
What did your parents say? Sorry to interrupt you, but what did your parents like? Were your parents for this? Because I can't imagine if when my kid turns 17, and I have three of them, and if one of them says, you know what, Pop, I'm out. Like, I'm moving to Australia or something. Like,
I think if you were living in a place where they didn't have as much opportunity, maybe you would have. Well, I mean, This is a question probably more so than a statement, but you probably would have thought about it differently. And that's what I think happened with my parents. They were like, okay, if we don't let her do this, if we don't help her do this, she might not have this life opportunity that is in front of her. So they were thinking, of course, it was really hard for them. I mean, if you talk to my mom, she like starts to get emotional over that, right? Because
they're still there.
Yeah, they're still there. My mom was visiting me actually when we were in Mexico, just a few months ago, or a couple of months ago now. So if you talk to her about it, she gets emotional, she gets like shivers and stuff like that, because of course, but at the same time, they knew deep down that if they don't let me do this, I might miss out on a once in a lifetime opportunity. So
yeah. Well, I mean, listen, it looks like it came to fruition.
Yeah. Looks like it's coming together.
Looks like you're doing pretty good.
Thank you.
Talk to me about, this shift from the corporate world to being an influencer, because I mean, I'm obviously very like intimately familiar with the whole, influencer space. I work very closely with Valeria. Talk to me about that, because, I'm trying to understand like who helped you with that transition, because with Valeria, it's like I helped her with that because I had a background in marketing and I was actually like really there in terms of like coaching her through a lot of the negative parts of doing it. But I mean, I guess first of all, how did this come about? What's the origin of this?
So during COVID, we were living in Alberta in Calgary. Both my husband and I were very deep into the corporate world.
By the way, sorry, I used to live in Calgary too.
Oh, really?
When we first moved to Canada. Yeah,
okay.
We arrived to Canada when I was 3, and we lived in Calgary until I was 11. So my early childhood is there.
Okay, very cool. Then you moved to Toronto.
Yeah, then we moved to Toronto.
Yeah. I moved from Edmonton to Calgary, so that was... But Calgary was
you
the
moved
next...
south.
Yeah, I moved south to the warmth. Those of you who know where Calgary is, how hilarious the statement is. But, Calgary had a lot of opportunity when it came to corporate. Like, Calgary is a really great city to start your corporate career.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, like, just work there in the corporate world. It's a really, really great city for that. So I mean, as far as corporate jobs go, I'm not going to lie, I didn't hate it. Like, I always knew that there was something else that I was meant to do, not to sound too cheesy, but like there was always something in me that was like, I'm tired of these numbers and working, 10, 12-hour days. But it was not bad. I mean, we had the quintessential, life that I used to see on TV. Like, we had a house in the suburbs, we had 2 vehicles, and it was pretty good. But during COVID, I got a little bit freaked out about what was happening in Canada, and for the first time in my life, I almost felt a bit of a.
Sorry, can you elaborate on that? Or we don't want to get political.
I don't care. Do you want?
No, I'm cool.
You're cool? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as you probably know yourself, because you used to live in Canada around that time, Canada went bananas during COVID, much like other, G7 countries.
Yeah.
But I lived in what was supposed to be and what was traditionally considered to be the Texas of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So it was supposed to be like the freest, province, and it was not at all like that. Mm-hmm. The government kept forcing these measures that were very clearly not working. I mean, now we look back and we all understand that that was completely unnecessary. And I started to think, my husband and I, we kept talking about it a lot, and we were like, this is total government overreach and borderline totalitarianism. Like, we're headed there. And I freaked out. So I was like, I don't want to have, for lack of a better term, all my eggs in Canada basket. I was like, if this happens again, we're fully invested in Canada. There's absolutely no diverse portfolio, so to speak.
Yeah.
We have nowhere to go. I don't like this. This is too risky.
And this was what caused you to become, this is what was the genesis of you becoming an influencer?
Well, it's sort of, in a way, that was one of the things. On a more positive note, I guess, was the fact that when, another round of lockdowns was announced in Alberta and I think all over the country, I was like, okay, this is getting like really depressing. And for the first time, I actually felt like borderline depressed because of the circumstances that were surrounding, even though, I was blessed. I lived in a beautiful house with my husband, all of that. But I was like, this is getting really intense. And if I could make like just one like positive thing in the world and make somebody laugh, that'd be really cool. And at that time, TikTok was taking off like crazy. And I was seeing more and more people do comedy stuff, and cultural comedy started to take off as well. There was a few creators who were doing like various cultural comedy from, the places they were from. And I was like, if I could like just make somebody laugh, that'd be really cool. If I could make myself laugh right now, that'd be really cool, So I had this idea that in my head about, what Russians hear when they move to North America. And even if you're remotely related to anything Russian and you say you're cold, people in North America right away ask you like, how you're not supposed to be cold. So I made a really funny video about that. And
was that the first one that went viral?
The first one actually before that, now that I think about it, that was the first one that went viral. But before that, I kind of wanted to just see what social media is like, because my career had absolutely nothing to do with social media.
Yeah.
Quite the opposite, actually. It was kind of not really advised, but it was kind of like, maybe don't really get involved in social media because it's you're working with a totally different.
See, that's very interesting because typically when you're in the corporate world, I think one of the last things you want is for someone to Google your name.
Yes, exactly.
And see all of these videos of you just, I don't want to say being unprofessional, but just it's not applicable, right?
Yeah.
So like Valeria was never in the corporate world. This was never even a consideration for her. She's like, whatever, like,
Yeah, so for me, I saw the opportunity there too because I liked the creative aspect of it, the creative side of it. And that's what I was missing in my career. It was very analytical, it was very methodical, but there wasn't much creativity. So I was like, something is missing in my life. And I feel like social media in this day and age is like a great avenue to express your creative abilities wherever they are.
Absolutely.
And I was like, what am I passionate about? I really love fashion. But fashion in Calgary, like I'm not offending anybody, but it's winter for most of the year and you're at home.
It's not only that. It's not only that. I think just as a culture, like when I think of, like, for example, when I think of the CAFA Awards, was it the Canadian something Fashion Awards? Like, it's not like like it's Canadian Fashion Awards,
right?
It's like Canadian television or the Canadian movie industry,
right?
Look, it's a small country, right? It's a small country, and as a result, it's not exactly rooted in like pop culture. Canada as a whole is one of the reasons why we moved here, because we needed to be closer to the industry where like you're on a global stage when you're in Miami. But talk to me a little bit about this character of yours.
My character?
Yeah, talk to me about your character. What's your character's name? It's not. I don't think.
Somebody asked me that recently, and I was like, my character doesn't have a name. So I have a few characters, right? One is, I guess it's all under the umbrella of like the Eastern European persona.
Mm-hmm.
But I have like a few characters that keep coming up, like the manager of husband's bank accounts, which all jokes aside is kind of true, right? But then I have like just the Slavic persona, or like the Eastern European persona, and it doesn't have a name. Definitely don't want it to be Svetlana, because everybody is named Svetlana after that. So I have to think about that. I have to give it a name, but
okay.
It's not actually a character. It's actually, she lives with me.
Right.
Times.
Right. And so did you get, did members of that community who you were, because you're kind of a member of that community, you just don't have your natural way of speaking, you don't have that accent. But did you get a lot of like pushback, or did you get a lot of criticism from women, whether they're in Russia or in any kind of former Soviet state or in North America? Do you feel that community of people, the community of women, were they supportive of what you were doing, or were they more offended? Did you offend, or did you like?
Mainly support, because, and I didn't realize that until not that long ago, but I started to bring out certain pain points and issues in like the Western world, and then also in the Eastern European world through comedy. So a lot of them really connected to it. For example, the dating stuff, right? Because a lot of women from my part of the world come to North America and they're like in shock. They have do you mean split bill? Like it's
yeah, split bill, yeah.
Split bill does not exist. So there's certain things that just they related to, and they were like, oh my God, this is so true. Like I wish I wish somebody could have told, my ex-boyfriend about this stuff. Or like somebody even messaged me and said, I keep sending my ex-boyfriend this stuff. And I'm like, you probably just want to get together.
It's funny because when I watch her stuff, I don't think, to me, it's not, I don't think it's funny. I think it's just, no, I think your stuff is funny. But when you talk about like the whole split bill thing, I don't think it's funny. I'm like, yeah, it's normal. But I could see how it's funny to people who are not part of that, who are not part of our culture. And I say our culture because I'm from the same part of the world as you. And I'm definitely very familiar with the culture. So when you started getting scale, okay, at what point did you realize, wait a second, this is a business. This is a business to the point, like this is a career in a business that I could actually like have a lucrative career with? Like at what point did you cross that threshold?
So at first, by the way, just to kind of go back, because I don't want people to think that it was like an overnight success, because it wasn't. Because there were a couple of videos that I posted.
2 years is a relatively short period of time.
It's short, but it's not. I don't want people to think that, like, I don't want them to get discouraged if their current content, for example, that they're posting is not getting traction, because mine in the very beginning wasn't getting traction either. That's what I'm trying to say. The video that went viral, it went viral overnight, but it wasn't like the first video that went viral. It was the first one that went viral, right?
But you got scale fairly quickly, like 2 years into it, as you mentioned before, 2 years into it to have an audience the size of yours. That's not an overnight success, but that's accelerated growth. Like they can work for like already a decade and they don't have the audience volume and the audience engagement that you have in terms of all your content. So what was the turning point? I don't know if you can comment on the finances, but what was the turning point financially when you said, okay, this is like a career. This is a real career. This isn't just, I'm not a hobbyist anymore.
For me, it wasn't financial. For me, it was when I started to see traction, and when I saw that, I wasn't even necessarily followers, but I saw the impact that I was making, if that makes sense. So when I saw traction from that perspective, I sat down with my husband and I was like, I think there's something to this. And he's wonderful. He's been so supportive. And, you said you and Valeria worked together in the beginning and you supported her a lot in this. And that's exactly what happened with me. My husband also saw the opportunity there, and he looked and he was like, you know what, this is something that you should be focusing on for sure. So I basically, and I don't recommend people do that necessarily, but I dropped everything else. And I was like, I think this is something that needs to happen.
You did the same thing.
And just went for it.
And what was your husband's reaction? So you're saying he was supportive, but when you said, I'm dropping everything else, because I'm assuming you gave up your corporate job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you gave up your corporate job, was that what kind of a conversation was that? Was that like, Cristina, listen, you're crazy. You're not, this isn't a full-time thing. Or was he like, yeah, let's just drop it all. Let's go for it.
let's drop it all and go for it. We have a pretty high risk tolerance, I've realized, him and I, and not in the past, looking back on it, maybe it would have made sense to take more calculated risks than we have, but also everything worked out in the end, so it was good. Because at the time that I approached him about it, we also realized that maybe it's a good idea for him to also quit his law firm.
Oh, wow.
He was working at a law firm, because he's not a very, not that he's not a very good employee, but he's not meant to be an employee. He's meant to run his own thing. So at that time, when I was going through all of those changes, I had the bright idea to be like, let's just both drop everything and build something of our own. So that's what happened at that time.
Was that scary for you guys to do financially?
Yes, absolutely. Because at that time we sold our home and we relocated the base of operation, as we spoke, as we named it, to British Columbia to be
Vancouver,
closer to his parents.
Okay.
They live in Kelowna.
You live in Vancouver now, right?
Kelowna. Between Kelowna and Vancouver, we kind of spend time between both.
I think Dan Martell lives in Kelowna. Do you know what that is?
No.
Dan Martell? He was on my show. He's a business guy. He sells software companies.
Oh, very.
And he's an influencer now. He's a business influencer.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm pretty sure he's from Kelowna. That's what he said. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I should take a look at that, because I'm going to be going back there in May. So yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, and so we didn't have a plan. We kind of had a plan, but we didn't have concrete set goals. Like, okay, this is the steps that we're taking. We were just like, let's figure this out as we go, which is not a good idea. But we figured it out, thankfully. So he started his own firm.
His own law firm.
His own law firm,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
And then I started to fully embark on the journey of the social media. The reason why I'm not saying that I necessarily recommend it is because you have to have really high risk tolerance and like believe that it's going to work and take real steps towards it.
But why? Why do you have to have high risk tolerance?
Because to move away from a stable job and income, you don't realize how used to it you are. Like, you don't realize how much stability that brings into your life. And when all of that gets smashed by your own decisions, you start to question, especially for my husband, right? We're quite traditional, right, in our family. And for him, this whole idea of like, wait, like all of a sudden what's happening? But at the same time, it pushed him, I feel like, to really make things happen quick, because his firm also took off quite fast, like faster than you normally.
Was that just by coincidence? Or he's just that good?
I think he's just that good.
That's good.
Yeah, and I think he put a lot of work into it. So, he kind of went for it. Some people, I think some people handle pressure really well, and they perform better under pressure. So when there's, a deadline, or there's something that you absolutely have to do by a certain time, or you run out of money or something, and you're like, okay, then it pushes them. Other people, I think it would stress them out too much, because I have friends who are like, we would never be able to do something like that.
Right.
Just drop everything and go. I need to have a safety net.
I think it's always stressful. I think, at any stage, especially in this industry, because it's so unstable.
Yeah.
In terms of like, if you kind of look at it over like a year, 2 and 5 years, and you kind of add up all the revenue, it's meaningful. But there are pockets of time for us and for you, I'm sure, where, it is unstable, and you don't know when that next kind of opportunity is going to hit, or that next, opportunity to monetize is. So how do you navigate that? Like, how is that now from you on the, how is that now for you? Like, how do you find the instability in this industry? And by the way, like, if you look at traditional, like, traditional celebrities, if you will, before social media, like actors and movie stars and, anybody in this kind of, in this field, it's the same thing. Like, you don't know when that phone's going to ring. So a lot of the times, the expenses are always set. Like, every month you know your expenses, but you don't know when your phone's going to ring, or you get a DM or an email saying, hey, there's an opportunity. How do you kind of deal with that? How do you cope with that?
You manage your money first and foremost.
Yeah.
It's very, very important to manage your money and learn how to manage your money, because nobody teaches us how to do that. I don't know, like, I wasn't taught, or maybe I wasn't, I just missed it, know? But I learned that as an adult, and I learned it the hard way. I learned it when I moved to Canada, and I, there was times when I was like, oh my God, this is like getting really intense. How am I going to make it, kind of thing? But you really need to learn how to manage your money, and you have to set systems in place that will maybe not prevent you, but that will help you in these times when, from month to month, one month you make really good money, and then another month maybe you don't make any money, right? But also, I think once you realize the value that you can generate that value in order to create more income, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So where are you at right now? I know you're launching a podcast. You've already launched the podcast. So I know that's in the work. Has it actually officially launched yet? Do you have episodes up?
It's launching on March 5th.
Okay. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
And then what are you doing in terms of like the rest of your content strategy? Are you continuing to put out content obviously on a regular basis?
Yeah.
It's short form. I think you're leaning more into photography now.
I'm trying to, because I really enjoy it, and I want to kind of mix in a little bit of lifestyle into my. I don't want it just strictly to be comedy, and I want to mix in some other niches, so to speak, into that. So I do love lifestyle, and I'm trying to kind of mix that in as well. Yeah.
And how do you deal? I mean, this is a common thing that, and you know, we've talked about this off camera, in terms of criticism, in terms of hate, in terms of all of this, you know, negativity. That you experience in being an influencer and being in this field. Like, how are you coping with that?
As cheesy as it sounds, accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative.
Yeah.
That's like my motto. You know, I realize that, like, I don't know when I'm gonna die. I know it sounds really, you know, daunting, but I really don't know when I'm gonna die.
It's kind of dark, yeah.
And to focus on the negativity and to focus on the opinions that are coming to me from people who, you know, I heard that many times, like, you'll never receive criticism from people who have done more than you, or people who have achieved something that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
You'll always get criticism from people who are either jealous or they're hurting. And once I realized that, it's like, actually, the problem is not with me. The problem is with probably, you know, the situation that the person's in.
Absolutely.
It kind of, you know, I sometimes, most of the time I'm good at it. I'm like, okay, I don't care. Sometimes, of course, you'll receive something and you're like, oh, this is just, why would you do that as a human? Why would you say something like that? But you just disregard, honestly, and focus on the good. With the amount of hate that I receive like 10 times.
Oh, you do? Okay, that's
that's
good. I'm just curious, the people who do have a problem, what is it that they don't like? Like, I think your content is, like, it's cute and it's fun, and the only thing I could think of is them, I don't know, like, I'm kind of reaching, but maybe they'll think it's kind of sexist, is demeaning to women. I don't think it is, but is that the kind of thing where you feel you're demeaning women?
Yes. Or, you know, sometimes I'll get hate from men.
Really?
Maybe have been, either they're not in a position to receive that message, if that makes sense, or they're not in a position to step up and be the man that I'm talking about in my content, but secretly they want to, because they want the kind of relationship maybe that I'm talking about.
Yeah, it sounds to me like they may be feeling a little inadequate.
Yes, exactly.
Because I feel like former Soviet women, they are demanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are, but we also,
Absolutely.
You know,
but you also bring a lot to the table.
Thank you.
But it's true. It's true, and I think that's.
We bring borscht.
Yes, well, you can, yeah. I mean, borscht is one thing. There's селедка and kartoshka. Like, there's all that stuff. Конечно. No, look, I think when I I remember years ago that I had a friend, and he said, "Yeah, you know, I'm dating this Russian girl. Oh my God, she wants this and she wants that, and she expects this and that, and she wants me to buy her a present, or she wants me to take her out and go on a trip and this and that." And I'd say to him, "What's the problem?" And he'd say, "Well, like, it's why should I do this? It's crazy." I said, "Go date a North American girl. Go date a Canadian girl, an American girl."
Yeah.
He goes, "No, but I like her. Like, look, she's beautiful. She's look how much she cares about her appearance and about how she carries herself." I'm like, then shut up.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like, what do you want?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, what do you think? So yeah, I mean, when a woman is bringing this kind of effort, you know, there's like this joke. Like, I remember every time, like, I'd you know, I've been in Russia and I've been in Ukraine. There's like this joke that, you know, women will get dressed up in their heels and their makeup just to take the garbage out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? And it's that level of effort. What do you think it is in North America? And I don't want to. I'm gonna get a lot.
Controversial do you want to get?
It's not. Look, we can get controversial. I mean, I feel like I'm allowed to say these things because to me, it's like, this is the culture I came from. I didn't go and say I'm gonna marry a Canadian girl. Not that there's anything wrong with Canadian girls. Don't kill me here, guys. But you know, I went and I married an Eastern European woman because that's all I ever knew. Like, when I was growing up, quite frankly, I had a Canadian girlfriend when I was 20 and she was 19. And that's it. And after that, I never had any Canadian girlfriends. Not that it wasn't I didn't connect with them like I did with Eastern European women. So that's all I've ever known, right? But what is it, do you think, is the cause of this cultural difference? Like, do you feel that in the former Soviet states, it's more competitive for women? They have to really bring their A game, because we're just, by the way, I have to say something. The women that are currently formally from like yourself and like a lot of other women who live in Canada or in the United States, they're they have this standard. But in Russia, when I go to Russia, not putting down women in North America, but when I go to Russia, oh my God, it's like everywhere you go, it's like a full beauty pageant. It's like you have a woman who just like lives somewhere, and she has like a full team of people who prepare her every time she leaves the house. So what is it in your opinion is this cultural difference between women in the former kind of Soviet Union and from these states and North America? Like, what's causing this?
I think it's the way we're raised.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned something really interesting, that you have to compete a little bit more for men. Definitely, there's definite truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
My husband and I talk about this. There could be a possibility that, unfortunately, the reason for that is because, to put it lightly, the maps of the countries in that region are redrawn every 30 years or so. So there's some kind of conflict, instability.
Yeah.
But also men in Eastern Europe, historically speaking, not everywhere in Eastern Europe. Like, I always make a joke, the best looking Eastern European men on average were in former Yugoslav countries, like Croatians and Serbs, But for some reason in former Soviet Union republics, there's always been this understanding that like a woman puts a lot of effort into herself. Mm-hmm. A man, he can put like a little bit of effort and he'll be okay. Like there's not, the level of effort is like not.
Well, no, it's not. But there's a saying that I've known for many years, and I'll say it in Russian and then I'll translate it in English. Just мужчина должен выглядеть немножко лучше, чем обезьяна.
Обезьяна, да. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I'm glad that you finished my sentence, because now I know I'm not the only one who knows that saying. So to translate that for everyone listening at home is that a man should look a little bit better than a monkey.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, so where producers are laughing.
Yeah,
usually they have a mandate. They have a mandate to stay quiet. They couldn't stay quiet at that. See, but it's true, right? Because I think men in that culture, they're not valued on their aesthetic. Like, they can't be repulsive.
Yeah.
They can't be like too out of shape.
Yeah.
But they're really not valued on their aesthetic.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because here in North America, everyone's in the gym.
Yeah.
Well, myself included, all these men are like are fighting to have this this aesthetic. Whereas, did you ever hear the joke about the two guys? They were in a sauna, and one guy was like overweight, and the other guy had a 6-pack. Did you ever hear this?
No.
Okay, so I'll tell you this. I don't know if I'll tell the joke properly. I might tell it I might completely mess it up and embarrass myself, but it wouldn't be the first time I've done something like that. So there's two guys in a sauna, and they're talking, and one guy has a 6-pack. He's fully ripped, and he looks at him, and he goes, "Что это у тебя?" Like, what is that? He goes, "Это пресс," meaning this is a 6-pack. Девочки любят это. Девочкам им нравится пресс. The guy pulls out a pack of money like this. He goes, "Это пресс."
Yeah.
Okay. Тебе просто какая-то болезнь. You never heard that joke? I probably didn't say it right.
But there's something to it, because I heard this recently. It's like a man can be like, if a woman, this is like going to be very good.
Oh, let's see, whatever.
But it's like if a woman is not good looking,
mm-hmm.
she can be smart, she can be funny, but still, like, the looks matter more on a woman than on a man. Because if a man is not, very attractive, he can be funny, he can be, so there's like certain things
he can have a couple of bucks too. That helps.
And he can have a couple of bucks. Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And it helps too. So there's some truth to that. And I think in Eastern Europe, there's probably a lot more emphasis on that. And we're just the way we're raised, like my mom would always say when I was little, like, "Ты же девочка." Like, there's certain things that I would do, and she'd right away be like, "You're a girl, you're not supposed to do that kind of stuff." Whereas here, there's a lot more emphasis of like, no, we can be like men, And
yeah, which I found that really odd. Yeah. Why would a woman want to be like a man?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, that's really strange. So you and I are caught in a very strange place. We're caught in you and I specifically, like our demographic of people who are from that culture, who were raised by parents from that culture who have a strong influencer from that culture, but were raised in North America, where it's impolite to say things like, a woman is somewhat measured on her appearance, and a man is somewhat measured on his capacity to earn money. And it's politically incorrect. Like, we're not here in North America, we're not supposed to say those things. We're not supposed to utter them,
right?
Into reality. But over there in Russia, I don't know. It's a very normal thing.
And people are really blunt there. Like, people, I would say that people don't.
I see that in your comedy, by the way.
Yes, people are very blunt, and they don't get offended. Like, it's just there's no such thing as being offended. You can say whatever, and nobody's gonna get offended. Here, it's like, you have to be very careful about what you say, so maybe also that has something to do with it.
I think a lot of it is political too.
Yeah.
Because here, like, political correctness, I mean, it's very important in a society like this. And you can argue, and now we're kind of getting, I like the kind of topics that we're swirling around here, and you can argue that this is a more advanced society. And as a more advanced society, we have to be more tolerant of each other, and we have to, we have to do a lot of things that, politically are dictated to us as individuals. Whereas in Russia, they don't care. In Russia, they don't care. They can ban certain things. It's just on the whim. Quite frankly, it's on the whim of Putin. Putin, he's calling those shots. But there was something else that I wanted to bring up.
You can be tolerant though, and still be honest, and not get offended.
Yeah.
Over things like that's it doesn't. I'm on a quest to be politically incorrect. No, just kidding. Because there's so much political correctness,
but it's too much already.
Yeah.
Why can't we tell the truth? You know what I found? What I found really interesting. What I find really interesting about the Russian culture. When I say Russian, I keep saying former Soviet states, because to me, Moldova, Ukraine, even though there's this the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, which I don't mind getting into, because that I have a lot to say, because my wife is Russian. And I'm Ukrainian, and
what a combination!
But
so many people have that.
Yeah,
like I have both too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it was funny. We were in Dubai last January, not this past January, last January in 2023, and everybody, there were influencers there from all over the world. So the Atlantis was doing this big event, and they invited some influencers from America, some from. I was going to say Canada, but they didn't invite anybody from Canada. Canada wasn't on their map, but they invited people from Russia and people from all these countries. And we get there, and it's like this whole melting pot of different cultures, and it's all influencers, and everyone's filming this and that. And I remember, if somebody, for example, wanted to create some content with Valeria, to do a collaboration, which, by the way, I saw the one you just did the other day. Went up the other day. It was very cute.
Thank you. Yeah, it was funny. After you left, we were recording the podcast, and then we did. I have another video actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing it. And so I remember you could so see the difference in cultures. If influencers are any representation of society in the country of their origin, this was so indicative. We would be sitting there, and somebody from America would come up and, oh, hi Valeria, would you like to create some content with me? I think it'd be really nice if we could create some content together. And Valeria's like, of course, yes, let's go create some content. Or Valeria's the same way when she's asking somebody. Valeria just doesn't ask. She's just too shy completely. God forbid she should ask somebody, hey, can we make some content together?
Really?
Yeah, she's super shy about it.
Interesting.
She's super shy. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other story. We'll get into that. But so that's how Americans would ask, or people from, I don't know, Sweden or whatever it was. This girl comes up to Valeria. Lera, а ну-ка давай, иди со мной, мы сейчас немножко ролик снимем. And Valeria's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be up. Sorry, that translates to, Valeria, let's go, come on, let's go make some content together. Yeah. And then Valeria's like, yeah. And then Valeria hesitated, she didn't go up right away. And this woman is standing there, decked out, beautiful, dress, makeup, done, And she's standing there, and she's looking at her almost like a thug, She goes, тебе что, лень? But she doesn't even know her. She goes, what, are you lazy? But she said it not, what are you lazy? She said it and said, ты что, тебе лень? You know what I mean? It was just so thuggish. And that's just so, that to me, I like that. I'm like, this is beautiful. And I said, Valeria, this is what you have to learn. This is what you should learn.
This is how you should be communicating. There's extremes, right? There's extremes on both ends. And sometimes I go back home and I get slapped in the face because I've been Americanized so much that it takes me a couple of weeks to acclimate.
Acclimate.
Yeah. Acclimatizироваться. I'm like, my brain is...
Молодец, Laura.
It's like the switch needs to go to English, back to English. But it takes me a while. Like even the whole, like the little things like smiling, for example, especially in Canada, right?
Your content.
Everywhere you go, and it's like I just smile at people, and I say hi and thank you and sorry. People don't do that there. Like you don't say thank you, you don't say sorry unless you really mean it. Like there's no such thing as, hi, how's it going today? Hey, beautiful weather. It's like, hi, this is what I need. Thank you, bye. But then what I've noticed also is people are a little bit more reserved in the beginning, but then if you become friends, like if you actually start a conversation with somebody and you get deep into it, people open up. But the example with Valeria and the influencer that came up to her, I realize that very often people from our part of the world, if they come here, they're perceived as rude because of that bluntness, because they translate everything very directly into English. So they'll say stuff and it sounds like they're being rude or condescending. And I mean, in that case, it sounded like that girl was a little bit maybe on borderline.
But to me, it came out of her so naturally. Like that's just the way
it's just her.
I didn't get offended because I feel like she talks with everyone that way. It was so natural. No, it was really good. Do you know why the Russian language, when native Russian speakers translate to English, why they sound rude? Because there's no like pronouns in Russian. Did you ever notice that? So if you did hear me out. If you did an actual translation, right, and you said in English, say I want to eat. In Russian, я хочу кушать, I want to eat.
Yes.
So when you translate, right, a native Russian speaker who doesn't speak English that well yet, they just translate, I want to eat.
That's why it sounds so intimidating. I want to eat.
I want to eat.
I go work.
Yes.
Wow, that's actually very true.
Yeah.
That's very, very true.
Think of another couple of sentences. There's no
whole joke, when Russian speakers speak English with a Russian accent, it sounds intimidating, but when they speak Russian, it sounds like a broken record, or like a record playing backwards. You know that whole joke? Yeah.
It really is amazing the difference in cultures. Have you? I mean, I don't necessarily want to go too much in terms of like the war and stuff. And the only reason I don't between Ukraine and Russia is because I'm just not well versed enough on it. I get a lot of bullshit people contacting me and saying, "Why aren't you taking a position?" And this, I'm like, guys, what do you want from me? Why do I have to be a political commentator on everything in the world? Why? Because like a couple of people follow me. What's the big deal? But what are you like in Moldova? What's the scene right now with all the chaos that's going on right now?
And I have the same thing, and I think part of the reason why I'm so conflicted not even conflicted, but just I feel very, anytime I look at it, it's very hard for me to think of it analytically and critically because it's a very personal issue. Because I have family in Ukraine, I have family in Russia.
Oh, wow.
I have very strong ties to both. My grandfather fought against the Nazis in World War II. He was born in Ukraine. He fought for the Red Army. And sometimes I think like I miss him dearly, but I'm almost glad he's not seeing what's happening because he would have a heart attack probably, because of the history and everything. But anyways, Moldova is okay. Knock on wood.
Wasn't Moldova? I heard that Moldova was concerned that they would be kind of the next target of, call it acquisition or whatever for Russia.
Right. Reason being is we have sort of a similar situation, but on a much smaller scale. Ukraine is a much bigger country with just the whole situation. So Ukraine had Donbass. We have Transnistria. And it's even geographically speaking positioned close to Ukraine. So Transnistria is on the eastern border with Ukraine. It's one of those unrecognized separate states, basically.
It's a state or it's a town?
Well, technically, its own country, technically.
Oh, wow.
But after the war collapse, I mean, depends on who you ask. I don't think so. There's no interest. There's no reason per se. Moldova doesn't have access to Black Sea. Ukraine has that. But technically speaking, we have a country where there's a small part which after the collapse of USSR basically said we don't want to separate from Russia. And a lot of people, for example, they didn't want communism anymore, but they didn't want to have bad relationships with Russia because Russia is it's like, the America of that part, so to speak, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So long story short, it's peaceful, knock on wood, everything is okay. And I really do believe that Moldovans, truthfully, because Moldova is such a melting pot of Ukrainians, Russians, Romanians, and Gagauz people, Bulgarians. Like, there's so many nationalities there. And I, in my optimist, view of the world, think that it would be the best to just recognize all of those as official languages. Do what Canada did with French and English, and let's live
Canada has
in
its
peace.
own problems between the French.
Canada has its own, of course, yes.
You weren't around for referendum.
Right.
You literally weren't born yet.
Yes.
I was there. I saw that whole thing go down. When it comes to Ukraine and Russia, I just want to kind of put in my 2 cents, is that for me, what's heartbreaking about it is that, and a lot of people won't have this perspective that I do, my mother's a Holocaust survivor. And so we're Jewish. My family's Jewish. And in I think it was 1942, I want to say. I'd have to check my facts. I think it was something like that. The Nazis were attacking Ukraine, and they were attacking Kiev. And my mother, she was 4 years old at the time, and she was the youngest of 4 children. And so my grandfather took my mother and his other kids, except for one, they had to leave him behind, and that's a whole other story. It's like a Holocaust story. And they got on a horse because the Germans were attacking way faster than the Ukrainian army or the Soviet army anticipated. And they had to get out of there really quick. And they fled to the Russian border. My Ukrainian family, at the time, my Jewish Ukrainian family, in 1942, fled to the Russian border, and they crossed the border. They took my mom, who was 4 years old, her siblings, my grandmother. They gave my grandfather a gun, turned him around, and said, "Go kill Nazis." But then, with my mother and her siblings and my grandmother, they gave them safe harbor, and for the entire duration of the war, they protected them. They protected them from the Nazis. So when I hear this, and this is a story I actually haven't told this like in a public forum before, but to me, that's why when people criticize myself, then like when they criticize myself and Valeria, let's say, or let's say just me saying, "Oh, how can you be friends with Russians? Like, how are you talking to?" I was telling you before, my friends Pashu and Hannah, because they saw us in Dubai and they were giving me shit saying, "How can you support these murderers, this and that?" And I'm like,
"What the?
This is oh yeah. Well, because listen, people express themselves from their limited point of view.
Right.
Yes, like I understand Russia is an aggressor, with Ukraine, and there's a war going on there. It's been going on for a couple of years. I get it. But what you don't know is that as a Ukrainian, as somebody who's Ukrainian, whose family was in Ukraine, I wouldn't be here if the Russians had not taken my mother in during World War II and given her safe harbor for the 4 years that that it took for Russia, by the way, to liberate the Jews from the Nazis. So I have mixed feelings about the whole thing. I don't agree with war in general. I think there's probably better ways to settle things than besides killing people.
Like sit down and talk at the table and be adults about it. I know it's really crazy. It's one of the most heartbreaking things that's happened, I think, in my lifetime. Honestly, for me,
I agree,
because it shook my whole world upside down. Because I grew up in a place where you would go to Ukraine whenever you would want. You could go, like, there was the flight my dad used to do. My dad was a pilot. Chisinau, Ukraine, Chisinau, Kiev, Moscow,
okay.
Kiev, Chisinau, and then Chisinau to Moscow, all over Ukraine. You couldn't do that since 2014, pretty much.
Right.
And then from Moscow to Chisinau, so my whole world turned upside down, and I really want there to be peace. And it's really heartbreaking, honestly. The whole thing is. So.
It is. It's terrible. I really love your comedy. It really resonates. I'm just switching gears, but it really resonates because I want to get off the sad stuff, because I'm sitting here with a person who I think is very funny, who you really strike a chord with me, because I don't usually talk about my past too much, but prior to meeting my wife, and my wife included, I mean, I only dated Russian speaking girls, like exclusively. So
was that like an intentional thing, like only she doesn't speak Russian? No.
It's I think it's for all of the kind of it's all of the reasons that you portray in your parody. It's Russian women and women from the former Soviet Union, they're beautiful. They care a lot. Their attitude towards towards men, it's just something that it was always natural to me. Like, I never had this thing where, I don't know, like I had a Canadian girlfriend when I was 20. She was 19.
And that was it.
That was it. And not by choice. It's just like, and then after that, I grew up in a Russian-speaking community.
Right.
Pretty much. Like, everybody spoke Russian.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And in Toronto, there was like a large population of Russian-speaking.
Yeah, Toronto's got a lot of, Miami, I think. We really love, like, our people really love brand cities, so to speak.
They do.
Like, even for me, I'm like, if I move to North America, it has to be Miami, New York, or Los Angeles, you know, like, or Toronto or Vancouver.
I think you're being polite with saying Toronto, Vancouver.
Yeah.
I don't think there's like beautiful women in Russia sitting there saying, or Ukraine are saying, I'm gonna move to North America. I'm gonna live in Toronto. Yeah. I don't think anyone's saying that. One of the reasons why we moved to Miami, there were several reasons why we moved to Miami, but one of them was that I said to Valeria, I said, we need to be in a place where it's got a universal appeal, right? Where the audience is interested in where you're at, meaning like the place you're at should be almost like a co-star in the content.
Yeah.
Right. And what I said to her is that the demographic of millennial-aged women who follow you, every single one of them has at some point said, I want to either move to Miami or visit Miami. Mm-hmm. I don't think any of them are saying the same thing about Toronto. So if you want to appeal to your demographic, and as an influencer, like, and I tell this to influencers, like, if you want to move somewhere, if you're relocating, you have to go where you think that you're going to have, close proximity to opportunities within the industry, but also be like something that you think has a mass appeal to audience.
That's basically what you're saying is I need to move to Miami.
Listen, look, you and I were talking about it with Alex, with your husband, Alex.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not this, like, I know, like, we're surrounded by palm trees and sunny, and sun every day, but it is a different scene. Especially moving from Canada, there's a lift on immigration, which you've already been through once.
It's like, oh, I have to do it again, but yeah.
You came in as a student. You know how I came to Canada? I came in as a refugee. I was a political refugee in 1976 with my family.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they were kicking all the Jews out. They didn't want the Jews around, so they were like, you guys can go. It was Iron Curtain at the time.
Right.
I love getting into Russian history with people like yourself who are from that region. But yeah, it was Iron Curtain at the time, and they weren't letting anybody out. It was like North Korea is now, right?
Yes, my aunt has a story of how she left USSR, which is also crazy.
Just tell me the story.
She married a British man who lived in Zimbabwe. And
did you say Zimbabwe?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, my family's like all over. That's why I'm like, this whole thing is so like insane and stupid. I'm like, I love Russia, I love Ukraine, I love everybody, you know? But
the same culture.
I think it's, yes.
Do you know that, sorry, I want you to tell your story, but quickly before I lose this thought. Growing up in Canada, in Toronto, I always referred to myself as Russian.
Yeah.
I don't speak Ukrainian. I never have.
Yeah.
My parents never spoke Ukrainian to me because at the time that I was there, it was all pretty much Russia because it was Soviet Union. And so my parents, they speak Ukrainian, but I've never heard them speak Ukrainian, and they only spoke with me in Russian. So
my dad still lives in like 1985, pre-collapse of US. Like for my dad, that's to him, this was all like a huge shock to the system, the whole collapse. Again, like my parents are really not pro-communist.
Right.
So when I say it's a tragedy for them, the USSR collapsed, it's not that it's tragic that communism no longer existed there or the communist system collapsed. It's just that it's weird to them that
culturally.
Yeah, culturally, because it's like we're all kind of the same culture, and like they had friends in Ukraine and Russia, and now they had to go through a border. It was really weird. It would be like the United States collapsing, and us having to, or you having to travel.
No, it's wild. It's crazy. You know where I was recently, and I saw this whole like shift from Soviet Union. I was in Azerbaijan. Have you been to Azerbaijan?
I have not been to Azerbaijan. Is that how you say it in English? Azerbaijan? Azerbaijan. Wow. Azerbaijan. Okay.
Well, I say it in English, right?
Well, I realize now that I've never said the name of that country in English. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was wild because I went there. It was this is a crazy story. But anyways, I won't. I'm interviewing you. No, I'm interviewing you. You're not interviewing me.
I know.
But no, anyways, I was in Azerbaijan. It was really interesting to see because the older the people were, the more fluently they spoke Russian. And the younger the people were, they didn't speak Russian at all. And you would hear the accent, like as like the people are younger, the accents when they speak Russian are getting thicker and thicker to the point where like teenagers don't speak Russian at all. They speak Azerbaijani,
right?
Which is interesting. Yeah, but that's all part of the region. But you were telling me a story about your aunt.
She had to get a visa to get out of the country. in like 1986 or 7 or something like that. Like, I want you to think about that. I mean, you know it, but listeners, to think about that statement. You had to get a visa to get out of the country, not to get in.
Right.
Like, I'm not even talking about that, but a visa to get out of the country.
But
Because you couldn't just freely.
totalitarianism. That's the whole point of that system. I want to switch gears again, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm not calling it yet because I have some more stuff I want to talk with you about. So I like to, I pride myself a little bit about, being knowledgeable about the influencer space. And to the point we're actually starting an academy, an influencer academy, Valeria and I.
Amazing.
Yeah. So tell me about, like, what are some of the challenges that you're, like, as an influencer in this business? Like, what are some of the things that you're, like, what are you challenged with?
Well, sometimes I'm challenged with my own personal, for lack of a better term, writer's block, right? Sometimes I feel like the pressure of like, okay, I need to create content. What if I don't post? Like, my engagement will go down if I don't post. And then I just have to calm down and be like, just relax. The idea is you either sit down. For me, I either sit down and I think, okay, what can I create? It's not a thing of like, oh, inspiration just comes to me.
Right.
And then other times, like, someone will say something.
I'm smiling. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I apologize. I know I'm interrupting a lot, but
No.
It's hard for me not to, because it's so interesting for me. So I was watching your content, and that whole thing that you did, and I know you did it off, like, you did it just completely random. It was with the bird poop.
Yes.
Because I knew when you saw that, I saw. Yeah.
There's large amounts of luck coming my way.
Yeah.
It was. Well, my husband was like, "Oh my God, we need to like quickly remove this from the car," because it was such a.
And you're like, "Don't you dare!
Like, don't you dare! We're not removing this. A, I need to film a video about it, and B, we're not removing this."
So you would say that your challenges are mostly is coming up with ideas that consistently create content.
It's not my biggest challenge, to be honest with you, because there's so much in our cultures. There's so many things happening around that you can make fun of at all times. I wouldn't say that's my biggest challenge, but I do have sometimes like the pressure of like, oh, I didn't post anything today. I should,
I get that all the time.
The biggest challenge I would say is probably getting past that fear of like, what are people going to think?
We talked about that on Friday.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what if people misunderstand me? Because I've realized that some people are determined to misunderstand you no matter what you do. And there's still times when, for example, I create a piece of content and maybe it's like a little bit controversial or something, because comedy is not going to be comedy unless it's a little bit controversial.
Of course.
And then I'm like, but what if like people misinterpret me? And then, and then I'm like, so what if they do? You're not, I don't have a responsibility to make sure that everybody understands me. My people will understand me. They'll be attracted to me because of my message. They'll want to, talk to me, support me. If they don't understand me, that's fine. That's totally cool. They have the right to do that. But I'm sounding like, oh, I figured out that, they have the right to do that and I shouldn't care about it. But still, you still do sometimes, because you're like, okay, is this too much? Is this too, I would say that. And then also, I think I need to do a better job, like reaching out, for example, to brands that I want to work with, because I don't think I do that enough. Like, I feel like there could be.
You don't feel you do that enough because you feel that you don't have enough volume of brand deals?
Probably, yeah.
So can I tell you what I think is the...
Please do.
You got to make more content that hits.
Yeah.
Because an inbound interest from a brand is like, it's just far, that conversation is just far better in your favor when the brand is reaching out to you because they've identified you as somebody who aligns with their brand. And the way you do that is the high volume, is to really like take a look at, like, let's say the last 50 or 100 pieces of content that you've made, find a common denominator in the top 5 and triple down on, and create, and 80% of your content should be based off of the common denominator you found in those top 5 concepts.
Yeah.
And then they come to you.
Yeah. So far all the brands have come to me except for I think maybe one. So it is, you're right. Yeah.
So that's what you need to, I bet right now, if I was to look through your data, that you're not doing 80% of the concept that is in your top 5 videos. I bet you're not.
Yeah.
Right? I'm thinking you're not.
Yeah, you're right. Because you can always see what content performs better, right? And what content hits the most. So more of that. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So what's next for you? What are you planning on? By the way, you know what I just noticed? I don't know if my hand, do you see how red my hands are? In general, my whole face is red. I feel like you came to my house and I look like I'm drunk. Don't I look like I'm drunk? Look how red I am.
You look like you're drunk.
No,
But why? What?
no, but I look like I'm red. I'm very, like when, especially like like very pale Russian, like pale Soviets like me. Like when we drink, we get really, really red. You didn't notice that when you go to like the Russian restaurant.
Yes, definitely, for sure.
Shots.
Yes.
But so the reason I'm red is because I took our eldest son fishing yesterday, and I was on a boat on the water all day long, and I put sunscreen everywhere except on my hands, and I forgot my hands.
I was gonna say maybe it's because you said you came in, and I got red, and I was like maybe it's like the alcohol evaporating, like the generational, alcohol
I don't
evaporating.
think so. No, I actually don't drink at all. I don't drink alcohol. I just noticed in speaking with you how red my hands are. But in any case, so what's the next step for you in terms of growing your personal brand?
I am loving my podcast so much. Like I just absolutely love talking to people. It's like my second favorite thing to do after making fun of things and not taking things too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the next main focus that I have. I've enjoyed this time in Miami and meeting you guys and just having all of these amazing conversations. I really believe to the core that most people are amazing. And through my podcast, I'm like determined to prove that to the world by talking to wonderful humans. So that's going to be my...
Have you ever considered being in character, doing a podcast?
No, but I definitely will now.
No, hosting in character.
Hosting in character, somebody who can be in the same character, maybe, or similar character. Like I should invite maybe Valeria and be like, let's just turn full Russian on this.
I don't think Valeria has that character. I'll tell you why, because when you do it, you actually sound like, if I didn't know that you can speak the way you do now, which is like without an accent in English, which by the way is shocking. You came here when you were 17, and the fact that you speak without an accent when you speak English, like nobody here, that, right? Or are you one of those people who think that they have an accent when they speak English?
Sometimes, but I've been told that you can barely notice it. If you pour me a couple of glasses of wine, though, it'll come out.
Got it.
And then there reached a level. I reach a level in my brain reaches a level where like it gets confused about what language is supposed to be speaking, and it's because I also speak Romanian, right?
Oh wow!
And Romanian used to be my second language. So I grew up speaking Russian. I learned Romanian because Romanian is the official language in Moldova.
In school?
In school, yes.
I didn't know Romanian was the official language in Moldova.
Yes, it's another... If you ask me, Russian also should be the official language of Moldova. And that's how I will get canceled in Moldova by saying that. But I really do believe that because so many people speak Russian there. There was so much, but because sometimes when I go there and because my Romanian, and I love Romanian language. I love Romanian language. And in Romania, I never have issues. Even when I say that Romanian is my second language, now it's my third. It used to be my second. English is now my second language. Although Russian and English are kind of on par at this point. It's weird. Like
in Moldova.
When I go to Moldova, I sometimes encounter some difficulties when I speak.
Oh, you're saying when you speak? I thought okay.
When I speak Russian, people be like, "Why are you speaking Russian? You're supposed to be speaking Romanian."
I know, well, because they're all pissed off. Imagine how they are in Ukraine. I don't even speak Ukrainian, but I was speaking with some people like on Zoom for some business stuff, and I was speaking with them in Russian, and they're like offended. They're like, "Why speak to me in Russian?"
Because I can't speak.
I said because I'm from Ukraine, but I only speak Russian. I never learned how to speak Ukrainian.
Yeah, it's very strange. Like the whole language thing never made sense to me.
But I understand why they're pissed off because of the current situation.
Well, yeah, but it's just I can't do it. Yeah. So, anyways, I spoke Romanian growing up, and then when I moved to Canada, I learned English. Before moving to Canada, I learned English, but then English became my second language, and Romanian became my third. Because I speak Russian in my family, if I don't speak Romanian, I started to forget it. So now, like a really good friend of mine, she's Romanian, and I'm like, speak Romanian to me so that because it's weird how your brain forgets if you don't practice it.
Absolutely. But I just want to get back to kind of the future. So kind of your future plans professionally. So you're going to continue obviously with the podcast. That's your big kind of project right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you're going to continue making short form photography. I think you should be more into fashion. I think you already are, but I think you can double down on that. If you don't mind my somewhat professional opinion. Somebody would argue that I'm
somewhat professional.
Yeah, somewhat.
Just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
No, I like that idea a lot. I would like to do that, actually.
You should do beauty too.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, you should do whatever to be a pazzerza, right? Is that the whatever's in your heart, like you should do. But I definitely think that you have range. if I may comment and give you this kind of like you didn't ask for this, it's kind of an unsolicited commentary.
Like a voice range, the soprano versus. So what's my range?
Well, I think
Gary,
your
give me
range,
my range.
listen, I mean, you can do comedic stuff, you can do fashion, you can do beauty. Now you're getting into the long form with the look. It's very similar to like when Valeria started. I was always there, and I was always advising her on kind of she started with photography, and then we moved into different aspects. I think you need to explore, but definitely like your short form video is on point. I think the photography is really good. I just think you could do more of it, especially on Instagram, because that's a lot of people say, oh, like Instagram, you got to do reels, don't touch photography. I'm always arguing with Valeria and our team saying you got to do more photos because you have a strength in photo. You come out well in photos, so why wouldn't you do it? Yes. Why wouldn't you do photos? It would make no sense. Did you ever do modeling before?
A little bit.
Right.
A little bit.
But all you need is a little bit, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
All you need
is a sense of what's...
All you need is a little bit to differentiate yourself in the photography that you can create versus a woman who has never done any modeling. So that little bit of experience, there's actually a lot of value in that experience that you can actually leverage to create really good, photography.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's definitely a good idea. And also, I love it. I really love it. I mean, it's, the more I do it, the more I love it. And the long form video too, the YouTube vlogs, for example, I really enjoy doing that.
But you didn't do them for a while. You kind of stopped, right?
I stopped because it was a lot of work, because I also, do the law firm with my husband and all of that kind of stuff. So there was just a lot of work, but now I'm getting into it and I want to make it the main focus,
How well would you say is your husband trained in being an influencer husband?
He's very well trained. Fairly well trained, I would say. Maybe.
Would you like me to maybe step in and have some conversations with him, give him some, some pointers on...
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really great. Because there are certain things maybe that we can, because we're both very involved in each other's businesses and in each other's...
As you should be. Good for you.
So I think it would be very valuable, especially, obviously, you guys are doing really, really well, and you have a really good, harmonious, relationship. By the, from the amount of time that I know you can see it. Harmonious relationship, and also very harmonious business thing going on.
Listen, we try. It's not always easy, as I'm sure you know as well. You're dealing with a lot of pressures of just everything. And we also have besides Valeria and I, we have 16 people full time working. So, that carries its own complexities,
Valeria and I touched on that actually when she was on my podcast the other day.
I mean, I'll watch it, but what do you guys talk about?
Well, she said, and something really, it resonated. She said, it's no longer just about me and Gary. It's about this responsibility that we have. It's this functioning thing that we are responsible for continue to function.
Of course. But to me, I mean, that's definitely a big aspect of it. And I try not to tell this to Valeria because then she might actually just get scared and shut down. But she also has a very big responsibility and as to you, to your audience.
It's a very interesting, actually, thing. I didn't realize how much responsibility it is. And it's a very strange thing. That's why it's so important for me. And I know Valeria is the same way, just, from watching her content. It's very important to make sure that, the companies that I work with are 100% aligned. The content that I put out is that's probably what I was saying, that's sort of trying to tie it to, that I love sharing things, but I want to make sure that whatever it is that I share touches people in the right way, right? Because it is a very strange sense of responsibility.
I think people, and if I had to guess, you're probably, your audience skews more female, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, that's not an easy thing to do. So both for you and Valeria, who are attractive young women, to not have just all men following you.
Right.
Because that, a lot of the time, that's what happens.
And I think it also depends on what kind of content you put out.
It does, but you've earned it. But see, and this is the thing, is you and Valeria are very much alike in the sense that you both underestimate kind of the what you've accomplished. The fact that you have young women following you, it means that men will follow attractive women. We understand why, because for a woman's appearance and aesthetic. A woman will follow an attractive woman, okay, but she also has to have something. There's got to be something else in it for her. She won't follow another woman strictly for aesthetics. She'll follow a woman because that woman is providing value. You provide, comedy. You provide, and you talk to your audience a lot. So I think don't underestimate that, and that's definitely a big responsibility. So look, I think you're doing great. I'm really happy to have met you. It's kind of surreal for me because, like I said, I was watching your content. You kept showing up in my feed, and I love these characters. And I think you're great. I want you to consider doing a funny episode of you in character. Get someone on. Oh, you know who you could have? It would be so funny if you did this. You ready for this idea?
Mm-hmm.
I think you have this look in your eye, like, what stupid thing is this guy?
No. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Do you know Stad guy?
No.
You never heard of Stad guy?
Stad?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
You gotta see it. Can you pass me my phone, guys? You gotta know Stad guy. The guy, he's all over the media now. Anyways, this guy, listen to this. This guy, he's in character. He plays this snotty rich kid. Okay, and he's from Europe.
Oh, maybe if I have not that I have a problem with names, but yeah, I'm sure if I see him, it was the same with Pashu. When you showed me, I was like, okay, now I know. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So he's in character.
Yes.
So I met him about a year ago on a retreat in Spain.
Nice.
And I invited him to be on my podcast. He said, Gary, there's only one problem. I said, what is it? He says, I've never appeared in public not in character.
Oh, that's hilarious.
He says, I've never
Yes.
So if he's never appeared in character, he won't go on a podcast.
Outside of the character.
He has to be in his character. So what I'm suggesting is you can reach out to him and say, I will interview in my character. I'll interview you in your character.
That'd be a great idea. Where's he based? France?
He's in UK. He's in London.
Okay.
Anyways, think about it. Well, you could always do it remotely. You can always do it on video as well.
True.
Yeah.
I think it would be a good banter. We'll compare maybe.
I think it would be
something. Yeah.
Well, I think the comedic aspect of he's saying he's this super he's the, which is by the way, it's not true. He's not this kid offspring of a billionaire, of billionaires, right? He's just he comes from a modest family, but he really plays the role well. And as a result, the luxury brands that he's making fun of, they all sponsor him, which is really funny. Yeah, but I think that would be really funny because you guys could talk about, meeting Russian girls, and you would be in your character and he would be in his. I think that would be really funny.
Confirming every stereotype. That would be the name of the episode.
It would be brilliant. It would be brilliant. Christina, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate this. And I know you're only in Miami for a short amount of time, and the fact that you took the time to come here, it means a lot.
My absolute pleasure, of course. Thank you so much. And you and Valeria have built something amazing, and obviously you continue to. And congratulations on all of the endeavors.
Thank you.
There's no way that you will not continue to succeed at the highest level.
Well, we'll definitely keep trying. And on a final note, when and if you decide to move to Miami, you have our support. You come to Miami, Valeria and I will hook you up as best we can.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's a really good place. You'll like it.
I think so too. I love it here.
Okay. And thank you.